Hi, and welcome to Seat Meets Table, the podcast that brings people together. I am your host, Sam O'Hara Childs, and my guest today is Helen Moore. Hi Helen, how are you doing today?
Yeah, good, yeah. Great.
Excellent.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Good to see you.
And you?
I thought we could begin by asking simply, what is permaculture?
Oh, gosh. You started with a good one
Big
there.
question, sure.
So, do you know about horticulture?
Yes.
Yeah, so gardening, basically. Permaculture is described very differently by everyone who kind of practices it.
Right, okay.
Which makes it difficult to explain. But for me personally, permaculture is like a holistic approach to gardening that doesn't just encapsulate the horticulture side of things, not just the gardening side of things, but also takes into consideration things like community and holistic ways to approach work. So there's like three main ethics of permaculture. There's earth care, people care, and fair share.
Right.
And you can use those in your work in however much you like. So with my community work, I have the horticulture side, so I have the earth care, but I also do have a lot of people care because it's community gardening.
Sure.
Fair share, not so much, because in permaculture that's a lot about kind of sharing your produce, say, if it was a garden. So if you have lots of tomatoes, you give those to your neighbour.
Right.
But you can use it in whatever ways you like. And then there's the permaculture principles, which there are like all principles being added to it all the time, which are things that you can use in gardening or your work. So it's a very holistic way of approaching working and gardening and that kind of thing. And people do just use it for work, not just for gardening.
As a philosophy almost, kind of?
Yeah, it's
school
kind
of thought?
Yeah, it's like a school of thought. So it was originally, they came up with it in Australia. And it was looking at what was happening around them. So they realised that the agriculture... In the environment. Yeah. So they realised that the agriculture that they had taken from the West and were applying in Australia wasn't working very well.
Right, because it's a very different environment there.
A very different environment.
Sure.
So, and that's agriculture. So that means one vegetable or something. And then permaculture is like multiple aspects to use. Oh gosh, I can't remember exactly. But so they saw that the forests were much more productive, and the forests were creating lots of vegetables, and so they were like, well, that's permaculture is more permanent culture, is what it stands for,
and more all-encompassing, perhaps.
Yeah,
but agriculture is just about vegetation more, but produce perhaps. But then permaculture is more about the entire environment.
Yeah, and all the aspects working together. So.
Sure.
A tree will be able to grow lots of vegetables because it creates its own nutrients it takes all the food from the ground and the nutrients, puts it into the vegetable. Vegetable falls to the ground and all that nutrients goes back into the tree. Whereas, that's just an example, whereas a tree here, lots of people might just grow trees in a row and not let any of the vegetables compost around the actual tree.
Sure. And that's ornamental stuff, isn't it? That's just, I want a line of trees, so let's put a line of trees there.
Yeah, that it could be ornamental, but it's also a lot. That's how food production is done.
I suppose so. Yeah.
Efficiency.
Yeah.
And then pesticides. People bring in pesticides because they take away the plants that grow around that plant naturally in nature that actually deter the pests in the first place. So permaculture is about bringing those elements back in.
I see.
So using nature to work together to create and produce what you need and want.
I see. Right.
I guess.
What inspired you to start Inner City Seeds?
Okay, so to take you back, so I moved to Plymouth probably about 7-8 years ago, and I didn't do any gardening at that point. So I studied art in Falmouth, and then moved to Plymouth. I was living in Mutley, so like the studenty part of Plymouth, and there's the St Matthias Church was opposite where I lived. Like the garden was opposite where I lived,
right? Kind
of at the top of North Hill, and that people were just fly tipping in the garden.
Okay.
Which for me was really weird. Like that was just the beginning of seeing how people in Plymouth treat where they live for me began was very different to where I was from.
Right.
And I just couldn't understand how people were fly tipping in a church garden. Seemed really disrespectful to me. I'm not a Christian, but
borderline sacrilegious, perhaps, or
but
disrespectful anyway.
That's when I offered to volunteer to help them clear it.
Sure.
Just get rid of the rubbish, basically.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was me or if it was like us as a group. We came up with the idea of putting plants there to deter people from fly tipping.
Right.
So we thought if people saw pretty flowers and nice things that...
Yeah, less prone to just dump stuff.
Yeah, less prone to be like, right, let's just,
Yeah.
So that was the idea. So they decided to advertise that as an in-house gardening group for people at the church. They didn't ask me, they just did it.
Right.
And then I was like under a lot of pressure suddenly to know how to garden.
Right.
So I started growing plants and researching it because I don't know. I think sometimes the best times you learn is when you're under pressure and you kind of...
Can be, yeah.
Yeah.
You're forced to do it, so you do it.
You're forced to do it.
Then you figure it out as you go along.
I was like, right, let's do it. So did that, learned how to grow, and then I met Tess Wilmot, who runs the Permaculture course. And I got some funding from Millfields Trust to attend the Permaculture course, basically. And it was great. She's a really good teacher, and Claudia Van Gool, who was also a teacher, learnt about it all through them, and it really teaches you also like the basics of kind of understanding gardening and how to put a plant in the right place. This one likes sun, this one likes shade, that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Making a basic garden design plan, bird's eye view plan. So I did that for the church because I wanted to create a garden there.
Yeah.
And then I moved from Mutley to Stonehouse and noticed that lots of people were kind of fly tipping in random places.
So you start seeing it again.
Oh, I see it everywhere in Plymouth, yeah. Started talking to like the local councillors and just sort of me and Slane started up Adelaide Angels on the street, Adelaide Street.
Yeah.
And invited people locally, and I started up like the Adelaide Street Angels gardening group, and we took over these patches and turned them into gardens. And then
derelict patches.
Yeah, they were just fly tips. So we got
right.
So we worked with like Clean Our Patch to get rid of the rubbish, the councillors to give us permission to garden there, and then worked with the community to garden there, and they still look after it to this day. I'm not part of the group anymore. And then so I decided to go solo and try and turn it into like some kind of business for myself to get paid, because this was all free. I was just doing it for free, and I had a lot of knowledge and understood gardening and working with the community at that point.
So it grew into a vocation, kind of?
Yeah,
organically?
I just let it go. I just let the ball roll and followed it.
Sure.
You know, what was working, I'd follow that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just started doing therapeutic gardening workshops at like Union Corner with Nudge and decided to start up Inner City Seeds and apply for funding to pay myself to put on these workshops, but also to get materials. So we were applying for funding before to get materials, but I was never getting paid for it. So doing a heck of a lot of work and not seeing any outcomes for myself, which going back to permaculture, you do have to look after
all things
yourself.
in balance, of course.
Everything needs to be balanced, so it was unbalanced, and so I've tried to balance it out, and now I'm based up at the Consiggy Garden in Kean, and I've got an actual patch of land there, so we're creating a sensory garden,
right,
with a strong emphasis on medicinal plants, learning how to use those and turn plants into healing salves and things like that, and doing workshops on that.
Did you like plants and gardening when you were a child?
Yeah, I was really, when I was younger, I was interested in either studying art or something to do with nature.
Right.
I was really interested in bugs, I think. Art, conservation. I also thought about cake decorating for some reason at one point.
Right. Well, it's artistic.
Yeah,
and cake is great.
And you can eat it.
At the end, there's cake.
Yeah, exactly. So my parents are big into gardening, but I never wanted to help them or anything. It wasn't something I ever thought about was gardening. I couldn't grow anything. Literally, I'd never grown anything until the church.
The time of the church, yeah.
Yeah.
So kind of you stumbled into it, or it stumbled into your life, and then you went with the flow of it.
Yeah, but it is very creative, especially
Sure.
like garden design, landscape
Definitely.
design, all that
Definitely.
sort of thing. It does
Yeah.
need a creative mind, but
Yeah, it's fascinating.
I think
as an art
permaculture
form.
as well really sort of taps into people who are creative, because you've got to problem solve and you've got
Think
to
around a problem. Yeah.
one of the principles is the problem is the solution, which I think is
Sure.
a really good principle.
Yeah.
Because you kind of start off from the get that nothing can be a problem.
Yeah.
Everything is overcomable.
A positive mindset.
Yeah.
And thinking laterally.
Yeah, yeah.
So rather than just like, oh my god, this is a problem, you think, no, there must be a solution. The seed of something in there, literally.
The seed of the solution is in the problem.
Yes, exactly. So look deeper, think around it, you will find it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that, definitely.
And there's lots of principles that you can apply to your own life that are quite philosophical, that have been observed from nature.
Yeah, I see that.
So the edge effect is quite a cool one, I think.
I've heard of that, but I can't remember what it is. Can you remind me?
In permaculture, the edge effect, to give you an example, is kind of where two completely different, not atmospheres, but cultures clash. So, say the farms that meet forests, and that in the centre there, they would call that an edge effect. And in the edges is where the most life kind of seems to exist. When you put a bucket on grass, the grass grows really tall around just the edge of the bucket. They call that the edge effect. They don't quite know, well, they probably, some scientific person knows why it happens, but it's something where different cultures could come together, and the exciting bit is actually where they meet. So two different completely things coming together. So like it's the same way you see a river along grass, and that along the edge of the river and between the grass is always really, really tall grass. It's that you can see it everywhere in nature. And in permaculture they turn that into a principle and called it the edge effect. So you could use that in the garden by bringing together a pond in your garden next to your vegetable patch, and you would bring in, I mean, like frogs that will eat bugs that might try and attack your veg, you know, that kind of thing. Bring in beneficial bugs that you want to pollinate your plants and flowers and vegetables. So you're working with nature to bring in more life, and that's like a positive thing. So you can also apply that to things like different cultures coming together.
Sure. Or even different aspects of yourself.
Different aspects of yourself, yeah.
Could be a wilder side, could be a more conservative side. How do you blend them or channel them both equally?
Yeah, so
possibly.
That, you might really like permaculture, because you need to be able to work with the principles and come up with your own ideas in your own way. So that's a great example. So you can go inwards, or you can look outwards at like nature and apply it in whatever way you like.
And things in balance again.
Things in balance, yeah.
And where the meeting points, like say with different cultures, or river and a pond, or whatever it might, or river and the shoreline, and the places where things meet. What does those kind of flashpoints? What does come out of it? When cultures could be cuisine, could be, I don't know, could be any kind of thing. Could be new languages. I don't know.
Interesting things happen. Yeah. In that space.
The confluence.
Yeah. And it's interesting. It's just a lot in like permaculture. They always talk about hedgerows. You know, like farmers put hedgerows at the edge of their farms. In the hedgerow is usually where the most amount of life is.
Yeah.
So you have your small birds, your bugs, your frogs. You have all the fruit that you go picking. You know, in the end of summer, so like blackberries and your rose hips and all your wildflowers, and they're all like congregated in this very small like edge that runs along the field.
So the most life is where everything is meeting at once, kind of.
Yeah, it's where the
flora, fauna, all different kinds, varieties. Yeah,
it's where all the exciting stuff is happening, basically.
Yeah.
So you can use that within your design. You can create more edges, and you can create edges to bring in things that you want. Or so that's another principle. So the principles are really interesting, and you can. That's why I like permaculture for working with the community, because it gets them thinking about themselves as well,
and it can be tailored to their individual needs.
Yeah, they can just like use it for their own benefit. They can look at these aspects and be like, oh, okay, how can I apply that to my own life? You know, how can I bring more diversity into my life by going to an event I wouldn't usually go to, because that is an edge for me.
Or just seeking excitement and something new and fresh.
Yeah.
To enliven their life or whatever. Let's go to a party or, I don't know, a soul night or reggae or whatever it might be.
Yeah, experience something different. You never know what might happen.
Yeah.
And being outside and being with the soil was just like, it's all the benefits all at once.
Yeah.
So.
And something just really tangible, hands in the dirt and, potting and weeding, whatever it might be.
Well, there's a chemical, they call it Geosmin.
Okay.
Geosmin. And it's the smell that you can smell after it rains. Right. Yeah. So a lot of people think after it rains it's the grass, but actually it's the soil. It gives off a chemical. Oh. But it's quite a pleasant chemical.
It's a nice smell.
Yeah.
Very refreshing.
There's only a very smaller percentage of creatures, animals that can smell it. And humans are one of them.
Right.
And I've spoken to people and we've kind of theorised that it might be to do with evolution and knowing when to go out and pick things, or that kind of thing. But it's proven to be a really enjoyable chemical for humans. They love it, and they've done loads of things. What's the word?
Tests.
Tests now to survey to find out that basically humans like digging in dirt. If you dig in dirt for 5 minutes, I think it gives off the smell, but it just makes humans really happy.
Well, there's no more direct connection to nature, is there, really? There you go.
They've also found the patterns in nature. So, the patterns that you see in, broccoli and vegetables.
Geometric shapes, that kind of thing?
Yeah, like the Fibonacci sequence, is it the shell? Is that the Fibonacci? And then there's, those... I'm trying to remember all the words now, but... Romanesco broccoli, that's a great one. And it's the fractals. The fractals have been proven now to make humans happy to see.
I see that. I'm happy.
Yeah, so I don't know if the vegetables and we have somehow collaborated to evolve together to create.
That's a fascinating idea.
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Maybe, I don't know.
But so they've done things around the science of awe, of being in natural spaces and things like that. And just bring how even one tree outside your window, just having something to look at, it raises the happiness of people that live in flats and things like that.
Which public campaign are you most proud of?
Oh gosh, I remember this question now. Public campaign. We did we took over an alleyway last year behind the Village Hub in Stoke.
Yeah.
Which is a community project there. And we turned the alleyway into a wildlife corridor. Nice. Which is also an example of an edge effect, I guess.
It's a good phrase as well.
Wildlife corridor.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, it's really great. So in nature, a wildlife corridor is a connecting space between two larger wildlife spaces. So for me, visually, what I think of is a forest, and there's another forest, and perhaps there's a road in between. Right. And to help the animals get across the road, they need a corridor. And so they call it a wildlife corridor. And we had a literal corridor, really. Yeah. It's a very literal kind of space. Sure. And it's a very urban space as well. So there's lots of parks in Plymouth. Yeah. But there's also a lot of...
Built-up areas?
Built-up areas, urban spaces.
And Stoke is quite congested and dense, isn't it?
Yeah, lots of cars around. So as well. A wildlife corridor in that situation is quite useful for animals to kind of find a space of safety away from cars or to find food. So we did a whole project about that and created vertical planters, and they were all themed in the permaculture ethics. So there was earth care, people care, fair share. So fair share was herbs, so people could come and pick their own herbs for dinner. Earth care was pollinator friendly plants, and what was it? People care, more lettuce, healthy vegetables.
Stuff that
I think
we can eat.
To. Yeah. So we did that, and then we had lots of planters along the bottom as well. There was a school that made one of the planters, so it's very collaborative, and we had lots of berry bushes that we put in so that the local birds could have some berries.
Sweet.
So we very much focused a lot of the plants that we grew around fair share in that space, but try to create corners where animals could find more habitat away from the roads right next to us. So it was like a literal wildlife corridor. That was a really nice project. It was a lot of hard work. Like the woodwork aspect of it was quite intense.
Yeah, it was
like
labour
using
intensive.
a full-on circular saw and drills and having to teach everyone, and goggles, and worrying about people like chopping off their fingers was quite intense. But they learned how to scythe with Vicky, who does the flax project here, so with an actual scythe. So everything was really dangerous. Cool. Yeah.
But they look good doing it.
They looked awesome. They're great group actually.
Why do we need community builders?
So I recently got a job as a Stonehouse community builder. Right. So separate to Inner City Seeds. So I work for Full Greens Community Trust, and they're a community project based in Whitley. And they went with funding. It was the council and the NHS went for funding for this role and gave it to Full Greens to run. So I work for Full Greens Community Trust, but it's very heavily involved with the councillors and the council, and it's a relatively new idea and role, which isn't being rolled out across the whole country, only certain places. So I know there's some in Bristol, and it's been going well there, and somewhere up north, and Plymouth have taken it on. And the idea is that they as far as I know, because I'm really worried some of them might watch this and just be like, email me, no, that's not right. So as far as I understand it, it's trying to move away from what the council has done in the past, which hasn't worked, which is assume what a community needs, which doesn't work well, especially if they don't live in that community. So kind of working in an office somewhere very away from the community, being like, they look like they've got an issue, let's do this. So assuming what the community needs and wants, helicoptering in, they call it, like a helicopter project. Sure. So you helicopter in, you do this project that you think the community wants, and then you leave. Yeah. And oftentimes because that isn't driven by the community, maybe not even needed or wanted by the community, and the community haven't even been asked about it. Yeah. It doesn't always work. So they're trying a new grassroots approach. And it is quite interesting because the training that we've done, it's very grassroots, what the council are trying to do. So a lot of what we do is based around AI or AE, which is appreciative inquiry. That's basically talking to people and finding out what they want, need, or what they love about the area. Yeah. So actually working on the positives a lot of the time as well. So if something's working in the area and actually all they need is a bit of help writing a funding bid, we do that instead of, right, let's come in, put something on, maybe it already exists. So we do an asset map of the area. An asset map is finding what things are in the area already and what things are working. Yeah, good idea. Yeah. And then we have our appreciative inquiry, which is where we go out and talk to the community and get these little interviews together. And then we have a making sense session together with all of the CBs, or some of us that are in that area. And we pick out what are the main themes that are coming up, what's working well, what people actually want to see that we can help them with. Yeah. And we discuss that together with our managers, and our managers kind of let us self-direct. We are very self-directed, and they let us kind of do what we think is what the community wants. So, and then we report back to them, is it working? Do we... And the whole idea is to build trust slowly in communities, because there's been so much distrust built up. Certainly, yeah. That even if you go up to someone in the community and say, I will help you in whatever way you need, the first thing that most people are like is skeptical. Like, oh my God, are you the police? Like, who are you and how are you going to get me in trouble? Please leave me alone. So we have to overcome that. We have to build trust. I live in my community, so I'm lucky in a respect that I already know a lot of people. I've done a lot of community work, and ABCD training. So that's asset-based community development, and that's very much teaching you how not to go in and be a fixer into a community, but to support people in the ideas they want to do.
Facilitate.
Facilitate. So one of my areas within Stonehouse is families, because they're very underserved in Stonehouse,
right?
Compared to other areas in Plymouth. It might make sense as well to let you know that community builder wise, we have area specific community builders. So we have one in Honick Knoll, one in Stonehouse, so on, and then we have kind of areas of interest community builders. So we have a BAME, Black, Asian, minority, ethnic, LGBT, so men's.
Geographic and then demographic as well.
Geographic and demographic, yeah. So I think it's genuinely really useful and needed for
sounds
communities.
Great. Yeah, definitely.
It feels like we're doing something genuinely worthwhile.
Yeah.
But it's just convincing other people that, actually the council do want to try and help you and try and make things happen.
We mean it this time.
Yeah.
Trust us, please.
Yeah, exactly.
We do want to help.
Yeah, and it's really difficult to sometimes to overcome that barrier, but I think it's really interesting with the people that they're employing as well, because there's a lot of people who already work in communities, which is very smart that they're employing.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
They already know how the community works. They're already on the ground. They already do grassroots activity.
Why is gardening good for the soul?
Oh, I think it's good for everyone's soul, but they won't realise it until they start doing it. Because I didn't really understand there was any kind of
material benefit.
Yeah, I didn't think there was going to be any mental health benefit to me.
Right, sure.
Because I was kept on doing it because I was like, I love being in the garden. It was really lovely. And then I think personally for me it's like, even if humans mess with nature continues on. It just, I don't know how to explain it. It's a slower pace of life, nature. It's seasonal.
Yeah.
You can't rush. You can try and rush the process. There's ways of quickening up processes, but it's very seasonal. And when you kind of nurture something from seed to eating the vegetable, which was for me a tomato when I and a little wild strawberry when I lived in Mutley, it's like an incredible thing to witness and nurture. It's like a little baby, a little baby plant,
Yeah.
And you nurture it and it grows and it grows and you're like, wow, look at this tiny seed and you're like, how on earth did that happen? How has this happened? And it's I hear that a lot from gardeners. It's like growing your first seed and actually eating something from it, or seeing it grow to a full-size plant, and then it dies off, and then it might grow back. If it, an annual is 1 year, but perennial will grow back year after year. And watching how it feeds itself and the energy the plant uses basically in this circular way is mind-blowing when you're doing it. I think you have to do it because it's undeniable when you're sitting with it that it's happening,
and it just takes the time that it takes.
And it's like life is not like that for humans. Everything is sped. Everything's about being fast. Everything's about being productive. But nature, it's not really. Humans do things to nature, but nature's about just growing and being with each other. And
it teaches you patience? Is that part of it?
I think it teaches you patience. It teaches you so much. Like, it teaches you that you're a part of nature as well.
Sure.
You can't really... we've evolved together. Only... It's just so crazy, all the things that nature has evolved to interact with humans. And because we're natural gardeners anyway, like, we've evolved to grow, we need food, we grow food. And we were foragers before that, and so we have like quite an intimate relationship with nature anyway, which is probably what people feel now when they garden. They feel, that connection, and it's just away from technology, it's away from people's opinions. It's a really beautiful thing to witness. There's nothing more beautiful than nature, I don't think.
Yeah, I'd agree.
It's like, that's why artists paint nature all the time. Because it's
It's got to be the main subject that's ever been painted or photographed, really. Nature.
You see, you go to Plymouth Hoe and you see like a little boat in the mist and like the sun in the clouds, shining
The
on
rays
Devil's
coming down.
Point,
Yeah,
and you're
yeah.
just like, oh my God, this is just
breathtaking.
And and that happens all the time. After we go, that will still be going on.
Yeah, true. Very true.
And it's this whole cycle of life and death. But then you're working on this like microscopic level with a seed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what right do I have to make a plant grow? But for some reason, if I put it in soil and water it and nurture it, I get something nutritious out of it that actually feeds me. And not only feeds me, it's medicinally good for me as well.
Yeah, it is good for you. Well, I understand you had a spiritual awakening.
I did,
Can
yes.
you describe that?
I call it a spiritual awakening, but others might call it mental. I don't know.
I don't know, it's your awakening.
It's my awakening, yeah. So I started meditating, like full on meditating. So this was after, it was only a couple of years ago it happened. So I would have said I was agnostic before that. And before that I was atheist. And then when I was growing up as a child, I was brought up Christian.
Right.
So I wasn't really interested in it at all. And then I gave up smoking, which I've started again, but I gave up smoking, and I needed routine in the morning to help me with that.
Sure.
To give me a bit of structure, I started meditating. As like when I get up in the morning, can't have a cigarette and a fag, so meditate. Needed to meditate a lot because the addiction is real. So I would meditate for 20 minutes in silence, and then I'd watch a talk / meditation from Tara Brach, which it was usually an hour. So I was sitting there for an hour and 20 minutes.
That's quite a long time.
So I was doing that, and also I think the smoking was repressing a lot of stuff for me. And then that alongside practicing permaculture and kind of being like, oh my God, everything is connected. You know, there's cyclical nature to life, death, birth, you know.
Well, it is deep stuff, really.
It is. And looking at something and being in awe of it constantly and just being
true
like,
awe.
How does this work? Like, it's obviously energy moving from one place to another place, you know, for me anyway. And then also something not particularly great happened. And then, so then I was in I've got like a little bath mat and a cushion in my room. And that's my meditation spot. So I was sitting there. And then this bad thing, I was like, I'm just gonna like forgive the person and just send them love.
Sure.
Which isn't something I do. If I'm angry at someone, I don't sit and send them love, you know. Sure. But I thought, why not?
Sure. I'm sending you love.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds mental. I'm aware of that. Like,
no, I get it.
I would have thought it sounded mental as well.
Yeah.
For sure.
But we try new things. The edge effect.
Yeah. Do you know what? Maybe that is like maybe what kind of happened, maybe.
Maybe.
Not something my brain was used to. So I sat there and I kind of just meditated and I was like, sending love, you know, but really meaning it. You know, it's a good practice for walking around daily life as well, just sending love to people randomly.
Sure.
I find it helps a lot.
Yeah, bus driver, postman, love.
Yeah, sending love. Oh, wow, you're so great, I love you. Yeah. So I did that, and then suddenly it felt like it was like a light. My eyes were closed, so I couldn't see anything. This is just kind of how it felt.
Sure.
It felt like a light coming out the top of my head.
Wow.
It was a really weird, very odd experience. I've kind of spoken to other people about it who do a lot of meditation and other like chakra practices and things like that, or Kundalini yoga, I think, or stuff like that, where that's actually something that does happen to them. So yeah, that happened, and then I felt like ecstasy, pure ecstasy.
Wow.
Like I was on drugs. And then
that's powerful.
Yeah, it was really weird. It was like I broke my brain by doing something it wasn't expecting. Like that. You know,
the edge effect, almost.
Yeah, like the edge effect, maybe, but in my brain, like I took it so to heart.
Possible.
That it's hard to forgive people in life. It's really not a natural.
No, not if they've wronged you.
When you're really hurt, when you're like deep in your soul, can't understand it, and I was like in a real place of like just absolute kind of couldn't believe, like,
Right.
I won't go into details or anything,
Sure.
but in that moment to choose that was what did it. It kind of was like, eh. And I decided to walk into town without a plan. Like, I'm a very much a plan person. If I go out, it's for a reason. I always have a reason. I don't wander.
Sure.
Which I'm trying to change that now. But I was just like, I'm going to wander. I was really happy. And then I bumped into two people that I know. And they, for some reason, I was like, oh, I'm just having this really weird experience. And they both relayed to me that they were spiritual. And I'd known them for a really long time, and that they'd never really spoken to me about that. For the rest of the day, it was really intense, just walking around feeling happy. And I was like, oh, I hope this doesn't end. And then the next day, it was like back to normal kind of thing. I don't care. I had a day of not caring about stuff. I had no worries. I wasn't feeling anxious. I have a bit of social anxiety sometimes in public places when there's lots of people. I just didn't care. And I loved not caring. Yeah, it was just a really weird experience. It's not something that I can like deny now. So
Sure, it happened.
So now I'm like, well, I can't be agnostic. I could try, but I'd be lying to myself now. Like when I was agnostic, if I told myself I was spiritual, I would have, you just know how you feel.
Yeah.
You feel how you feel.
Yeah, and if it really happened, you have to reconcile yourself with that. Like, well, it happened.
Mental or spiritual awakening.
Sure.
Either way, it was really positive. To bring it full circle,
Sure.
That's what's beautiful about gardening, is that it's a beautiful mystery.
Yeah.
God, that sounds so corny. Nature is a beautiful mystery.
Yeah.
There's lots of things we've done to explain lots of things, and we try our best, but it feels bigger than me.
Sure.
It's almost like I've made it my god, I suppose, in a way. Nature. It's something more important.
It's a good god to have.
Yeah, it's a good god to have. It's not more important than people and things like that, but it's more important than me. Where when gardening, you talk to other gardeners and they're a bit like this as well. Like they sound like they've been smoking weed for years or something. It's because how to garden well is to work with energy. But not like, oh, I've got a ball of energy. It's the energy in the plant.
Sure.
When you observe the plant, that's all you need to do to learn how to garden. Because it tells you everything it wants and needs through observation. And you can see where the energy... If you want a hedge to grow sideways, you cut the top of it. Because you've cut off the energy and it starts pushing the energy that way. If you want a plant to grow tall, you cut off the sides. So it can't go that way anymore. So it pushes its energy up.
Sure.
So if you understand that energy is how to garden,
I see.
That's how I see it, and it's really helped me with understanding.
What's the science that goes into planning a good green space?
The science...
design, I suppose. Plotting things out.
So...
What goes where?
The basics of like a garden design, what you want to do is draw a bird's eye view of that space. So you would make a key saying like 1 metre to centimetre. So you can really get the measurements of that space. So you work out from your picture where is north, south, east, west. And that helps you work out where the sun is rising and setting. And then that can help you with placing your plants. So plants that like sun, you put in the sunny spot.
Yeah.
Sometimes plants like a little bit of sun, so you put them in morning sun or evening sun, not midday sun where it gets the whole day of sun.
Yeah, it's quite specific.
Oh yes, yeah, they're quite
picky buggers.
Picky buggers, really. And then you want to work out things like the wind, where the wind's coming from, and you would want to work out the height and the spacing of your plants. And then, of course, you want to work out what do you want in the space. Do you want it to be a nice space for you? Do you want a little path that wanders through? Do you want a little seating area for yourself under a tree?
Sure.
Do you want a place for Caesar to hang out?
Yeah. For my last question, which are your 3 favourite herbs to use in cooking?
Oh.
Or it could be medicinal plants.
I did a healing salve workshop recently. A balm that you can put on cuts or bites or anything like that really helps. So beeswax, extra virgin olive oil, like all organic stuff basically. Some essential oil of lavender, which is also really good for you, essential oils of lavender. And I also picked weeds which have lots of medicinal benefits to put in it. For that salve, I picked plantain. So narrow leaf and broadleaf plantain, which is like really good for stings. So it's better for you than dock leaves are if you get a nettle sting,
That's
that kind of
interesting.
thing. So you can just use plantain leaves out in the wilds and chew it up or rub it on a scratch and it'll be fine.
Right.
It gets rid of the sting. Or you can process it like I did. I also really like self-heal. There's lots of things that we don't use anymore that we used to. It's in the mint family. And it's a really interesting one because it's got so many health benefits to it.
Right.
So self-heal and calendula. So calendula is like a marigold. Do you know like French marigolds? It's in the same family as that, but it's looks more like a daisy. What you do is you make an infused oil with that, and then you sieve out all the plants, and then you use that oil and melt the wax and put it in the oil.
Right.
Put the essential oil in that, mix it, put it in the fridge for a little bit, and it sets. And then you have this balm you can take with you everywhere.
Nice.
And it's amazing.
Anything in cooking?
I love to cook.
Pick some herbs in the dish.
I love all herbs. Like I really love to cook, so I
Don't
like
discriminate. All herbs.
all herbs are great. One of my favourite herbs just to smell is probably rosemary.
That is a beautiful smell. It's lush.
I love that smell. There's something
about it.
so good about it, and have it with potatoes. What else do I like? I really love basil.
It's nice.
Like I'm a really big fan of Italian mozzarella salad. So I love to have like tomatoes, basil, mozzarella, croutons. And when you water basil at home, it gives off that really strong smell of basil. So I'm really like keen on that. Oh, I really like pineapple sage, which is quite a rare.
Is that a different brand?
It's not a very English one.
Sage.
Yeah, so you can get loads of different types of sage and mint. So we've got loads of different. We've got tarragon mint in our healing garden.
Really, a whole cornucopia of things I don't know anything about. It's fascinating.
Yeah, well, they call that nature blindness. Because you would.
You just don't know.
Yeah, you just don't know anymore. You don't need to know.
Right.
Really. So you don't kind of need to have this information.
Sad state of affairs.
And I do lots of stuff with like teaching people about that and the herbal side of things, and there's like so many herbs and things that people don't know about. I did at one point have a collection of different mints. So I had apple mint, chocolate mint, spearmint mint. Well, and also cool. Just fresh produce has got pretty much everything you need health wise, and because we have so much processed food, don't get me wrong, I have a lot of processed food, but because we live in that society where we have lots of processed food, we kind of deny ourselves the natural medicine that we would get.
Well, that's it. That's the final question. Thank you, Helen. Great to talk to you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Please like and subscribe, rate, slate, comment, cavil, share, suppress, whatever you like. And stay tuned for more fantastic interviews with brilliant guests. Hasta luego.